it was Marcia Baldwin who told me I should investigate this Feldenkrais stuff, because Sam Nelson had just come from his training in Toronto to teach by invitation at Eastman. He gave a Sunday evening class that was free to the students. Eastman would pay him, but anybody could come and take the class. And there's a whole story behind that. But about the same time that I really needed Feldenkrais, I was a very stressed out young mother, and rushing around trying to do a full-time graduate work at Eastman, teaching my own studio, teaching at the local community school, the Hochstein School of Music, teaching at Eastman as well. I was just a mess. And that's when Marcia said, go check out this Feldenkrais practitioner. And then Carol came in, and it was body, mind, spirit, all of the same collection.
Right.
I like to say the universe was really sending a big signal.
I'm laughing because I discovered your book that you wrote with Dr. Nelson when I was in the exact same stage of my life, young children, running around like a mad woman. So I'm interested in the nuts and bolts of how you co-author a book. Well, I'm sure there's many different ways, but in this instance, how did it work? Did you write bits? Did he write bits?
Absolutely. It was really fascinating because Dr. Nelson he created all the lessons. Some of them are tried and true traditional lessons that Moshe Feldenkrais taught. But Sam, the first thing, I have to go back, because after I took his class, he and I ended up in the same Gilbert and Sullivan theater group, and we were doing the Gondoliers. And I was Casilda, and he was in the men's chorus. Casilda is, of course, one of the soprano leads. And it was in the spring, and I was having spring allergies. So every time I would come off stage, he would do some Feldenkrais work just to put me back together, and then I could go back out and sing the next big aria or whatever. And after that, he said, I love singing, and I'd never sung in a choir. I really like a chorus. I've never been in a show. I'm having a blast, but I feel like I need some voice training. How about you and I trade off? Let's, I'll teach you Feldenkrais and you teach me singing. After the first week, I said, Sam, we have a paper. And then after the second lesson with him, I said, Sam, we must have a book. This is fascinating. We've got to write this book. So we started that way. It was just completely not planned. I wrote all the stuff that's all the material that is voice related, and Sam wrote a lot of the background information, like the functional integration and kinesthetic imagination part of the Feldenkrais method. But you can't tell where one voice stops and the other voice begins. And that is interesting, because we're very different in our style of writing, but it evolved so that when I'm writing, I can't even tell the parts I wrote anymore.
Right. Oh, how fascinating. Because that's why I'm interested in asking you the question, because I couldn't pick it from reading who did what, or if you did everything together, or
I'd have to go back and look at the original manuscript and say, right. This is the part I wrote. Other than the lessons, those are all Sam Nelson's lessons.
Right. Oh, very symbiotic. So
yes.
For people who may not be necessarily so aware of what Feldenkrais is, do you have a quick way of describing it?
It is a method in which, going back to how a baby first learns to move, turn over, lift up their heads, learn to roll over, get up on all fours, stand up, explore. All of that primordial information can often be tempered and sometimes lost, because as we grow, we mimic. We're always at our computers, or we're in our, into the phone, or we're driving in traffic. So we impose these non-productive body habits. And the Feldenkrais method, through the magic of reprogramming the neuromuscular system, puts you back into that original state of how a child learns, and how a child has not taken on the bad habits of the world.
Oh, and gosh, I would recommend everybody read a chapter in Norman Doidge's book, The Brain's Way of Healing. I think it's
Yes.
that
Yeah.
book
Oh,
on
yes.
Moshe
Yes.
Feldenkrais. Oh my gosh, it's fascinating.
Yes.
The way he
Yes.
overcame polio, I think he had, and that's how this whole thing developed. And it's really amazing how powerful the brain is. And so specifically for singers, apart from obviously alignment benefits of doing this kind of body awareness work, what other benefits do you see to singers in doing some Feldenkrais work, or indeed any body awareness work?
Oh, Lord. First of all, Feldenkrais is not as well known in the United States as Alexander Technique. I think Alexander Technique, first of all, Alexander and Feldenkrais actually did know each other, but they were 40 years age difference. So many times people will say, well, how does Feldenkrais differ from Alexander Technique? And I said, well, we're all on the same track. Moshe, being a physicist and the first European to win or to earn a black belt in judo, he brought all that interest into his self-discovery, whereas Frederick Alexander, an actor who lost his voice, figured out what he was doing with his head and his neck that created that laryngitis and healed himself. So they both came at it from a self-exploration to overcome their own impediments.
In today's society, and particularly this year, that importance of body-mind connection and the holistic looking after of all of our students and ourselves is really super important. So what do you do to stay healthy? How do you maintain that healthy body mind?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me. Well, I grew up in a sports-minded family, education, music, and athletics. So I was a competitive skier, I was a competitive equestrian, and a competitive swimmer. Obviously, you can't continue to do those as a competitor, but I still ski avocationally. I ride when I have a horse, and I love to swim. I'm back doing yoga, and I've been taking classes in Tai Chi and Qigong. And I'm starting to incorporate Qigong more and more into my own singing. And now I have a couple of students who are fascinated and open-minded. So we start out with some Qigong at the beginning of the lesson as part of our body warm-up. So just a healthy approach to living. Music, singing, good for the heart, good for the mind, good for the soul.
Oh, you're clearly such a vibrant, positive person, which is probably a combination of a result of doing all of those things, but your obvious passion for what you do, and which clearly has led to you being quite successful in it.
I didn't set out to be successful. I just set out doing what I love to do and wanting to share that.
And that's the best way of becoming successful, I would say.